Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to Chatting Up the Irish with me. Tonight I'm speaking to a friend of mine. His name is Maírtín Enright. He hails from Dingle in County Kerry, but he lives in Sligo. He has lived in Sligo for many years. He is very knowledgeable about the archaeological sites all around the county and the music scene, but he also is very knowledgeable about the great poet W.B. Yeats. So hang with us for about 30 minutes. We hope you enjoy the show. Well, I have a very special guest with me this evening on Chatting Up the Irish. His name is Maírtín Enright. He is originally from Kerry, a very, very special place. He'll be talking about that. And he is living in Sligo now. He has many talents, and I'm delighted to welcome him to Chatting Up the Irish. Céhfuil tú, Maírtín?
Oh, come on, Fad. Come on, Fad. Lovely to see you.
Tá really good
What a
fun to
surprise.
you, Claude.
Oh, well, let's be Falter Oath. Falter Oath, go Fleerul, go Sligo.
Maírtín, you have first of all, you hail from County Kerry. You hail from just outside Dingle. Tell us about the Gaeltacht area. Explain to our listeners what the Gaeltacht area means and what it means for you.
Okay, actually, I'm from Dingle town itself.
Oh, are you? I thought you were from just outside.
From the town, but I went to school with kids in the secondary school from the Gaeltacht. So the Gaeltacht is the area. Well, Dingle has partial Gaeltacht status itself within the town, and then immediately west of the town, where people have been speaking Irish continuously through the millennia, I suppose, at this stage. So they have what they call the Gaeltacht status. So it involves people who decide to educate their kids through Irish and who speak Irish in the house all the time. You know, they get a little grant for a housework and for a house removal and or a house repair there was an incentive, I suppose. And now, of course, it has turned into a business proposition because it's a fantastic area, and the summer visitors for the Gaelic language alone is considerable. Really, really considerable.
And of course, Dingle is known for a very special little animal or mammal that resides just in the bay there. Fungi.
Yeah. Fungi was there since 1983. He became a business in 1986. And as the locals said, he made the idle rich.
He did. No, well, I tell you, how is he? He went off there for a while. He disappeared for a while.
He's gone. He's gone. He hasn't really appeared since the when the COVID, the late autumn there. That was it.
Really?
That was and one of my colleagues says it was like the Italian 90 years. That the going was good for a long time, and he became an industry because they were up to 16 boats at one time, and there were all these boats plying people out back and forth. But it's a beautiful spot, the mouth of the harbour, and it's a lovely trip to take if there was never a dolphin there. But of course, he was the big attraction.
And of course, you've got the Blaskets off there, and you've got Skellig, Michael, and
looking out to the south. And I mean, in the heart of the Gaeltacht, it's not just the language, but it's the archaeology, the early Christian heritage. So from the Skelligs right across the Dingle Bay up to Mount Brandon, and at the base of Mount Brandon, people will be familiar with the image of Gallerus Oratory. It's there certainly since the 12th century AD, maybe before it. It's a church, early medieval, early Christian church. There were 9 different monastic settlements in that valley alone.
I know.
And Joyce and myself actually worked on the excavation of a site at Reask. And if your listeners can follow up on the word Reask, is a beautiful cross slab which has been fashioned in silver and gold through the people. So there is the heritage, the archaeological heritage, the natural beauty, and then the language itself. And the music, of course, today is big time.
Yeah, the Begleys are a very big musical family there in and around.
I think of 30, 40 years ago, that family had produced 5 records of the old records back in the 70s. So then they've been added to since, and because of people like them, it's a fantastic place for musicians to go and live. Very place to live if you can make a living down there. So now you have people, the young Marina Cowleve, she's singing internationally, and she's native of the area and living there, and I suppose she's doing a lot on Zoom these days, but so it has enabled top quality musicians and artists and writers to go and live and settle and make a living
Yeah,
in the area.
yeah.
Yeah, great.
It's a great history, and you went to school with the last person born in the Blaskets.
Yes, the single child, Garrod Cahan. I says a year or two older than me, but he was with me in secondary school. And there was a famous headline came out in the Irish press about 1950, that he was the loneliest child in the world. And he got presents from America
Did he?
on the head of that headline alone. He did.
Wow,
Uh,
brilliant! Because he was
so,
born in the Blaskets.
he was the last born there. Yeah, yeah. And,
And there
and
was a great book I remember learning it years and years ago at school. Peg Sayers, wasn't she from just outside Dingle?
yeah, she was a native really of the Ventry side, but she married into the island then, and she became a legend because of the mind that she had. A couple of 100,000 lines of between poetry and prose were annotated by the folklore collectors. So, I mean, she couldn't read or write, but her own story was written down by her son,
Yeah,
and it became the book Peg, which was the bane of the life of generations of kids going to secondary school
yeah,
because there was a lot of sorrow and sadness in it.
yeah,
But like her colleague Tomás O'Crane, who wrote The Island Man, they lost children. Their teenage sons
yeah.
died. Their teenage daughters died. There were serious illnesses. They fell off cliffs. They were drowned. Different real tragedies that they had to put up with and still battle a tough existence on the
Yeah,
island.
it was a
So
tough
that's why
existence.
it was. I mean, more than I think there's a myriad of books, maybe 50 or 60 books have come out of the Blaskets now
Yeah,
since.
brilliant.
But so it was her folklore stories that are quite unparalleled, really, as a single woman's collection of folklore, and
Yeah.
they're all written down and saved in the National Archives of the Irish Folklore Department in Dublin.
So you
So
ended up
yeah.
leaving, and you came to Sligo in what,
Well, I was in Dublin. I
1974?
I trained as a teacher in Dublin, and worked in Dublin for a few years, and got to met all the big musicians at the
Yeah,
time. But and then I met Joyce through archaeology, my wife.
yeah.
So we met in Dublin, and she got a job in Sligo in the library, and I had finished my degrees and so on at night in Dublin, and I decided I wasn't going to stay in Dublin too long more. So she got the job in Sligo, and I followed her
You followed
after
her,
that.
and you never
Uh,
left.
well, I say to people about 1970 or early 70s, I came down for a long weekend, and it's not over yet.
Yeah, yeah. Sure, you became more of a Sligonian than a lot of us.
Well, no, that's not that's 45 years in the making.
No, I'll tell you. You were very, very involved in traditional music in the area as well, Martin. You were involved in the Flag Hole na HÉireann, and you were involved in the
Yeah.
Trades Club, and a
Well,
lot, lot.
it was a great hobby of mine because when I was young, the famous piper Liam O'Flynn, his father was a first cousin of my mother's, and
Oh, really?
yeah, so they from the time he was very very young,
Oops.
they always came to Dingle. They came to Clare and Dingle from Kildare on their summer holidays.
Yeah,
So I knew him terribly well in Dingle, and then in Dublin, I was on his coattails every time there was a good session anywhere,
I
and
know.
I saw the beginnings of Planksty, and through the Tradition Club in Dublin, I met Willie Clancy and Seamus Ennis, and I went down to the hotel where the Coatless had their session. It was after the Sean Tracy branch, the Shield, not the Shielding Hotel, the hotel in Clontarf there. I met Leo Rowson there.
Yeah,
So um, it was a great time in Dublin.
yeah.
Um, Sean McDonagh and Seamus Ennis and Nicholas Tobin, they would all appear at this tradition club on a Wednesday night. And I had 5 or 6 years there. So when I came to Dublin, to Sligo then, I missed that hive of activity in Dublin. And a great friend of ours still is Catherine McConville. She used to be, her brother-in-law was Tom Crean, and they ran the Tradition Club. So she came to Sligo at the same time.
Yeah.
And we kind of said, well, we've got to think about doing something around this. And we got on to people like Carmen Gunning and Joe Dowd, and we formed the basis of the Coatis branch in 1975, February.
And was that
And then we,
that wasn't the Fred Finn branch now, was it?
no, that didn't come till 1987. This was the Sligo town branch of
Okay.
Coatis.
Yeah.
And through time, we have run County Flags, the Connacht Flag 86 in Sligo town, and then
Mm.
the All Irelands of 89, 1991, and then more recently in the Big All Islands of 2014,
Yeah.
2015.
And
And they were really,
you were also an organizer of the Fiddler of Dooney.
well, yes, we revived as a branch. We revived the Fiddler of Dooney in 1988. And because of funding, really, it lapsed in sometimes in the 1990s and 2000s. And it's been on the go now for the past 12 years continuously. And the 2017 winner was the famous American fiddle player now, Haley Richardson. So she's playing a blinder with Mick Maloney and people like that, and she's been in Riverdance. So that's been a great joy to be able to revive something like that and keep it going. It's an iconic piece of sculpture that we have, the Fiddler O'Dooney, and it's a competition that all young fiddle players want to say they were.
Doodle won it. My oldest son won it at one stage.
Well, he might have won the junior competition, I think.
Junior, yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah. We have under 16 and over 16.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a great journey that way to be able to post something like that.
Absolutely, you know, and
Yeah.
it's a great outlet for the young musicians in the area as well to get together and swap tunes and play tunes together and become very good friends and travel around in musical groups. It's great.
Well, what has happened in modern times, we have the Fred Finn branch in Sligo town as well, and they have a whole myriad of classes on. So in the modern flats, I think the big thing that has made a difference are these groupie ceol. You have the Kelly bands, which is 10 musicians, but a groupie ceol is 20 musicians.
Yeah,
And the 20 musicians gives a lot of young kids an opportunity to perform
yeah,
with a group. They may not be the most proficient musicians in the world, but they can be very good musicians, and they really love this. And performing with as a group of ceol at the All Ireland level is just a dream come true for a lot of them,
it is.
because they
It
may
is.
not be, they might not be just great solo musicians at the time, but many of them will become that, and they have become that.
Exactly. It's the encouragement that they get from being part of something like that.
So that's the value, I suppose, of what Cultus has done on a worldwide basis. And we were mourning this week the loss of Joe Burke.
I
And
know.
Joe was a firm fixture in Tubbercurry and Drumshambo and the Willie
Yeah,
Clancy Summer School. And he played in the pubs of Connemara. And,
yeah.
but it's the teaching that he has done. And there's a lovely Facebook page yesterday by Shane Mitchell, the Sligo accordion player,
Yes.
and the night before by Dahi Gormley. Joe
Yeah.
has influenced all these people. So his legacy will live on forever.
Absolutely, it will live on forever, and our sympathies go out to Anne, his wife, and his family as well. I knew Joe very, very well. You
Yeah,
know,
man.
with
Yeah,
going
so
teaching at the different summer schools as well, we'd hung
that's
out
right.
together. So, yeah, he's a big loss to the traditional music world. But you're also into archaeology. I mean, coming from where you come from, and then arriving in Sligo. I mean, I'm going to move out of the way here, and I'm going to
Yeah.
let you talk about. There you go.
Yes, well, if any of your listeners were looking today, and they may be able to get it online, the University College Galway, NUIG, had Stefan Berg talking for a whole hour and nearly an hour and a half on the passage tombs of County Sligo and putting them in their international context.
Yeah.
So what you're looking at there is the tomb. That's a tomb we call tomb number 7 at Carramore, and that was excavated in the very late 1970s. And that's where Joyce helped out with the Swedish team that came to Sligo in the late 1970s and into the early 80s. And one of those students became an adult, Stefan Berg, finished up doing his PhD on the monuments of County Sligo, the landscape of the monuments. And now they're looking for World Heritage status for
Yes.
these passage tombs. What you're looking at there is the passage tomb, and on top of the hill, the pipsqueak on the top of the hill is the 40,000 tons of material on the great passage tomb of Knocknarea of Queen Maeve.
Yeah.
Queen Maeve in Celtic terms, but of course the monument was put there, if she ever existed,
Yeah.
2,500 years before her time. So she exists in some form. Joyce tells me here from the side. But so it's unparalleled, really. It's unparalleled, the monuments that spread from the top of that mountain behind you, 20 miles to the south, southeast, and east of it.
Yes.
Um, there's this complex of 85 monuments of
Yes.
that type in Sligo. So they're looking now, they're starting a program, a campaign, which may lead to have it being
Yes.
declared as World Heritage Status. So that would
It would be
be
great
that.
because it deserves it. I mean, we're talking about some of these archaeological sites like Carramore, Carrowkeel. They predate the pyramids by 700 and 800 years. I mean, it's a
Oh no,
very
a long time before that, a couple of thousand years.
really,
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
Martin.
yeah, at least 1,000 years. These are going back now to 3.5, 4,000 BC.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's
And
that's
I know
pyramids are
there was a
2,000
great
BC.
article written about Martin in a local newspaper, and in that article, you and Joyce did some archaeological digs in Drumcliff. Is
Yes,
that so? What is in Drumcliff?
well, that's where Yeats is buried, and Drumcliff is the monastery there was founded in the 6th century by certainly the parochial of the followers of Columkill. So Columkill is famous for the Battle of the Books, Inishmurray, the connection with Scotland, Iona, Islay, Derry, Durrow. The Columban tradition is, I suppose, unparalleled in the Christian tradition.
Yeah.
So whether he couldn't have founded them all himself, but certainly his followers in the 6th century were founding these monasteries and dedicating them to Columkill. And then through the centuries, Joyce was asked, because they wanted to expand a car park at Drumcliff in 1980, 81, those years, she was asked to supervise a section which was going to become a car park. And she did that over 6 years between 1980 and 86. And parallel to that, she would have had people studying the history of the monastery. And it's easily seen that that monastery existed for 1,000 years, from the 6th
Wow.
century to the 16th century.
Wow.
It was possibly up to 25 acres in extent.
Yeah.
And it's the only site, and your listeners can look it up, it's the only site in this part of the world here in Northwest Connacht where you have both a high cross from the 10th century, let's say, and a round tower. And that high cross at Drumcliff has a little icon on it, a little emblem of the Virgin and Child. And the next best parallel for that is on Islay and Iona in Scotland.
In Scotland.
So if there was never a book written, there we have the archaeological proof of the connection between these sites. And so Joyce was there for those years, and because we had cut our teeth on the monastery at Rias, as I mentioned earlier, near Ballyferter in west of Dingle.
Yeah.
And we were pretty familiar with the makeup of the early Christian monastic settlement.
Yeah.
So I suppose then it's known today as the burial place at Drumcliff, because he said, he mentioned the phrase, the holiness of monks. He has his most famous poem would be Under Ben Bulben. Well, his last poem, really, last great poem.
And we're talking here now about W.B. Yeats, the famous
W.B. Yeats, yes,
poet that's world renowned for his
well, because it was his great grandfather who came as rector in 1811.
Okay, and he is buried at that church.
Drumcliff.
Yes.
And he was the first Yeats. Yeah, and then the generations of Yeats, and eventually Yeats's father married a girl who was a daughter of the great shippers and millers and business people in Sligo, the Pollexfens. So that's how John Yeats marries Susan Mary Pollexfen. And because instead of following his life of law, he becomes an impoverished artist in London.
He does.
And what does she do? All she has to do is to hop on the train in London, go up to Liverpool and get on the family boat, because her family ran the Liverpool and the steamship Sligo from Sligo, Derry, London every week in the 19th century, sorry. And that's why she came back to Sligo as often as possible. And she left Jack Yeats here for 7-8 years.
And he was a great artist.
Yeah, between age 8 and 16 roughly. And WB spent 2 3/4 years here continuously over the ages of 8, 9, 10, those years.
And
so
would they have, Martin, sorry for interrupting you, would they have stayed on holidays down in that house down in Ross's Point? What was it?
Yes.
What's the name of it?
At Elsinore.
Elsinore, yeah.
Well, they would have visited Elsinore, because he writes quite a lot. They really stayed in Sligo town at Merville, the grandfather's place, the mother's maternal and paternal grandfather. or sorry, his maternal grandfather and grandmother, and that was Merville House. What's now Nazareth House to you? That was Merville House.
Oh,
So they would have
really?
gone down. Yeah, the old section of it was Merville House, and that's where the Pollockses lived for a few years, and then they moved on from there. But they were there for about 20 years. So that was when she would come back, and they would go on day trips down to Ross's Point because these Middletons and Pollocks was the Middletons owned Elsinore Lodge,
Yeah.
but the Pollocksons would rent out a house, like a summer house, a lodge for the
Yeah.
summer,
Yeah.
and the lads had access to that area. So that's why in the Stolen Child, he says, "Far off by furthest Rosses, we footed all the night, weaving olden dances, mingling hands and maintaining glances, till the moon has taken flight. To and fro we leap and chase the frothy bubbles, while the world is full of trouble and is anxious in his sleep. Come away, O human child, the waters and the wild, with a fairy hand in hand, for the world's more full of weeping than you can understand." And then he bases that poem from Lochgill to
Yeah.
Ross's Point to Glencar. So
Yeah,
that's
he was
that's
very
the
into
late.
mystic. He was very into mystical and occult like
Oh yes, he
life at the
was.
time.
And he got that through his uncle George, who was a Pollux from. These were Masons, Masons
Yeah.
in Sligo town, and some of the Masons were interested in that specific thing of the occult,
Yeah.
and then he went on to other things as well, because I think he was in a way for us. You see, he wasn't a browbeaten church goer, and therefore in his more liberal years, he was free to explore any religion and every religion,
Yeah.
and he looked east and west, and
Yeah.
that was the beauty of what he was able to do. So he was such a genius. But Drumcliff, he writes about the base of Knocknarea in his very first poem, The Wanderings of Oisin, and 50 years later, it's under Ben Bulben,
Yeah.
under Bear Ben Bulben's head. Drumcliff churchyard Yates is laid. So
Beautiful.
he writes this himself, and he
Yeah.
says that this is where he's going to be laid, and he was aware of the holiness of monks. So he was aware of the antiquity of the place long before his people. And
Yeah.
that's why Drumcliff is a beautiful spot,
It
to be
is a
buried
beautiful
looking out at
spot.
Ben Bulben. And
Yeah, I brought a lot of tourists there to see his grave and to see the scenery and um
right.
and they love it.
Oh yeah, every time because you're
You
standing
have
in.
you have there's one of his works that you love reciting. Will you recite it for me?
Well, I thought I might recite Red Hanrahan's song about Ireland because this is written at a very interesting time, 1894, and the early 1890s, influenced by Douglas Hyde. Douglas Hyde publishes The Celtic Twilight. Yeats Hyde publishes The Celtic Twilight, and Douglas Hyde publishes the, um, the love songs of Connacht.
Yeah.
And as well as that, you had the Irish Literary Society being founded in London, in Yeats's home. Hyde is the vice president, and the next year, 1892, Hyde comes to Dublin, or Yeats comes to Dublin, and he founds the Irish branch of the Irish Literary Society. So all these things are happening, and the influence of archaeology. He's looking at the publications that come out, Wakeman's publication on Ireland, and the archaeology of the stone monuments, the history of Sligo by Wakeman and O'Rourke. These are all been published in the years before that. So that's why he's taken with Kathleen Ní Húlacháin.
Yeah.
She's like the mythical protector of Ireland. She's Ireland in a metaphoric sense. And then Red Hanrahan was based on a real historical character by the Munster poets. And so Yeats was taken with all this, and he includes Knocknarea and he includes the Cailleach Béra in the third verse. So I'll say Red Hanrahan's song about Ireland. The old brown thorn trees break in two, high over Coming Strand. Under a bitter black wind that blows from the left hand, our courage breaks like an old tree in a black wind and dies. But we have hidden in our hearts the flame out of the eyes of Kathleen, the daughter of Houlihan. The wind has bundled up the clouds high over Knocknarea, and thrown the thunder on the stones for all that Maeve can say. Angers that are like noisy clouds have set our hearts a beat. But we have all bent low and kissed the quiet feet of Kathleen, the daughter of Houlihan. The yellow pool has overflowed high up on Knocknarea. High up on Clough-na-Bare, for the wet winds are blowing out of the clinging air like heavy flooded waters, our bodies and our blood. but purer than a tall candle before the Holy Rood is Kathleen, the daughter of Houlihan.
Yeah.
So there's a note of hope in this, and it's
Yeah.
like his lament for Ireland, and it's based on the old Ashling of the 18th century, the
Yeah.
Ashling poetry, the vision poetry,
Visions.
and Yeats does this to perfection, I think, and it was actually said to be Maud Gonne's favourite poem.
Yeah. And what was his relationship with Maud Gonne and Lissadell House and the Gore Boots and all of that?
Well, it's two totally separate things, I suppose, because Eva Gore-Booth and Countess Markievicz, Constance Gore-Booth, who becomes Countess Markievicz, they they were conscious of the tragic history of Ireland and the downtrodden effect of landlordism on the common Irish people, and they could see the injustices, and they could see that people had a right to their land. So they kind of forsake their heritage of the big house,
Yeah.
and they both left. Eva. I'm just reading Eva's biography at the moment. She went to Manchester, and Gore Booth had property in Manchester, and one branch of the Gore Booth uh, subscribed to kind of money towards the deprived and towards it was like a bursary that was put up to help people in need,
Yeah.
and that came out of the Gore Booth properties. But so she settled in Manchester, and she led the way of the fight for women's rights, the right to vote. So they became the suffrages. Now
Yeah.
the suffragettes became more militant. So Yeats, then she was a great writer. They were very highly educated and highly schooled at home. So Yeats admired Eva as a poet, and in fact, at one stage he was thinking about marrying her. Would he offer her a proposal?
Yeah.
It didn't work out, but he did visit. He did visit Lissadell in 1894. He visited twice, and I've spent a few nights there then, and in 1895 as well. So this was all going on in Sligo, and then he meets Maud Gonne for the first time in London, because his family, as I said, moved to London in the 1880s, 1890s, and they're in a couple of addresses in a beautiful part of Chiswick in West London at Bedford Square, Bedford Park. And on one occasion, Maud Gonne came to deliver a message from, I think, was it from John O'Leary, right? From John O'Leary to his father. And of course, when she was delivering the message, he says, that was the beginning of my troubled life.
Wow.
He was
You
smitten
know,
with her beauty from the
yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
And of course, he proposed to her 4 times, uh, maybe more.
Yeah.
And I suppose that was fortunate for us, because some people will say that the likes of The Wind Among the Reeds, it's a volume he publishes in 1899, is a book of love poems to Maud Gonne.
Yeah.
And that's
So
why
that
you
would
could hear
never have
Joyce
happened if he
reciting.
hadn't fallen in love with her.
No, she refused, and he kept on writing fabulous love poems.
You see,
So,
there's always
yeah,
a silver lining, Martin.
no, so the Song of the Wandering Angus, I
Yeah.
could get Joyce to sing it for you.
I recorded it actually.
You did, no, you see,
Yeah.
that's the total love
I,
poem to Maud Gonne.
yeah, I recorded that. It's a
And
beautiful.
then he continued being friendly with her for years, and then he was proposing to her daughter Isolde, and so that it never went away. His love for
Yeah,
Maud
yeah,
Gonne,
yeah,
um, and he was a great friend. He had great women friends.
yeah.
He was quite
Oh,
friendly with a
yeah,
number of women.
he
So I
was.
mean, a number of books have been written about the
Yeah.
Yeats and the Muses, and several books on the topic alone.
Sure,
Uh,
we could talk for hours, but would you believe it? We've run out of time.
Imagine.
I might get you
Well,
back again at some stage, Martin, to cover some other stuff. But thank you
yeah,
so
but
much.
if you're listening to any specific wishes
Exactly.
that to read, I could read anything for them.
Well,
We were at a poem launch last night, a book of poems by Maya Cannon.
yeah.
She's a full-time poet now with Aosdána, member of Aosdána. It was a Zoom launch last
Yeah,
night,
yeah, yeah.
and
Well, definitely, like our listeners, as I tell them every week, this will be up on Facebook at some stage, and it's sponsored by Secret Ireland Tours. And if anyone has any questions or any comments to make, please put them underneath. And if Martin can answer them, he will. And If not, I will try and answer them. But he's such an interesting person. We're going to have to get him on to finish. We could talk for hours, I think,
Well,
with all that Martin. Martin is known as a seeker, a learner, and a doer in the locality. So thank you once again, Martin, for coming. And
you're
as I
welcome.
said,
Walter Rowe.
this will be on our Facebook page at some stage. I'll let everybody know when you're coming on. And once again, if you want to come to Ireland next year, it probably won't happen this year, but check out secretirelandtoursllc.com. And if you want to join Martin, have you a Facebook page or a website or anything, Martin?
Oh, I'm on Facebook, all right. Yeah, I'm
Perfect.
on. You find me on Facebook.
Yeah, so people would
That's
be
a
able to.
personal Facebook. I don't. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't
But
have. Is it a recording finished now?
no, no.
No. Okay. And well, we
So,
don't have a business Facebook. It's just a personal Facebook page.
well, so if anyone wants to get in contact with you, they can get in contact with you there. So thank you very much again, everybody.